Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to. One is that I don't often present in Estonia. Even though I'm based here, I've been living in Estonia for over 14 years now. Most of my time I spend traveling around the world, speaking with governments or critical infrastructure, helping them about security and also around how they do technology in the future. And I find myself in quite a unique situation today that I've actually not only presenting in Estonia, but this is actually my second time today. So to be actually presenting two times is quite an honor. And I've actually was presenting this morning in Tartu, specifically around data privacy and data protection. So what I'm going to be presenting to you today is really going to hopefully open your eyes to what's coming in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take you on a bit of a journey. And it's a journey through time, and it's really showing that where we were in the past and where we're actually going to be going to in the future. And what I see, which is significant, and I kind of call my presentation here, it's a collision of worlds and multiple worlds. We've heard a lot of talk over the years about artificial intelligence, how it's going to take over the human race and humanity. We hear a lot about machine learning. That's really going to help actually automate a lot of the things we do. And we're starting to see more and more in virtual reality. So where does that leave us, and what's going to happen to us as we move forward? So let's take that through the journey, and hopefully you'll get some surprises. So one thing that's important is that all these technologies have been around for years. It's only to the point in time we're actually starting to really get to make a much more use of them. Virtual reality itself has been around since the 1950s, as well as artificial intelligence has been used in the early mathematical algorithms. And also, we find machine learning has been around since computers have been designed and been used. Now with that, in the early years, they've actually been used for things like simulation or educational purposes. But what we find is that they've been around for so long, however, we've already got very little use of them until recent years. And there's been significant changes in recent years that's really made that more possible and also more interesting. So as we go through that journey, let's see where it takes us. So first of all, to make sure that everyone's on the same page before we start. It's always good to make sure that we have a reset. And that reset is to make sure that we all have a definition understanding together about what virtual reality is. And virtual reality, really, it's replicating our real world, the environment that we have around us in multiple different senses. And it's really simulating that physical essence that we have of the presence. And then putting it into imaginary worlds. So we think of things like World of Warcraft, or we think of Minecraft or SimCity, different worlds that allows us to go into those worlds and start to experience and learn and spend time in those worlds. Now, I myself, I've been doing this career for now more than 25 years. I've been doing this since the mid-'80s, when I was very heavily involved in computers. And my world was very much different from children's worlds today. I actually had a physical world, like all of us do, and I played football, and I played different types of sports, badminton, I played with my friends in the street. We actually interacted directly. We actually spoke to each other, which is probably a bit unique today that not many people do that. But I had a physical world, and I lived in that world. I read books, I went to school, and other things. But I also had a virtual world. I spent a lot of my time as a young child spending time in computer games. I spent time playing things like R-Type and Road Rush and different types of role-playing activities. But there was a key change that in that life that I had in the 80s and early 90s, that they were separate. What I did in the virtual world stayed there. It didn't have any impact in the physical world. What I did in the physical world didn't have any impact in the virtual world. But significantly, we're seeing those two worlds start to collide. They're coming together. And that's what's significant, and that's what's going to change a lot of the things we do in the future. So with that, there's the collision of worlds. And we actually call it either augmented reality or mixed reality. And it's really where things like artificial intelligence and machine learning is really starting to take shape, is that convergence of worlds. And with that, we've seen it with the things like who played Pokemon Go for the last year, where you were actually seeing and chasing Pokemons. Well, that was a form of augmented reality. When you're driving your car, Many of you have the heads-up display, the HUDs. And that's also a form of augmented reality, where you're actually overlaying the technical world and the physical world together. So this is something that we're starting to see more and more as technology advances, and we're seeing more different elements of it. So when I was growing up, this was kind of my first time into the window of what I refer to as augmented reality. This is what we typically call BlackBerry prayer, when you see many people in the mid-2000s sitting on a bench with their head down. And we're starting to see more of the kids today at schools and the kids today around, and even yourselves, or they're actually streaming it to their friends live. And this is what's significant, is that we're no longer kind of we're actually looking at through a glass window. We're looking at through our mobile phones. We're looking at through other devices and tablets. And it's really interesting that looking through, and one prediction I have is eventually many of you today will actually start going to see concerts in the cinema. You will start seeing other live events being streamed. We're already seeing it with movies and music. They're already being streamed continuously. And what's going to change as well, significantly, is live events. You're going to be going and experiencing live events without actually ever having to leave your seat. You can go watch the World Cup final and be sitting in your favorite seat and not actually have to get up and go there. You can be sitting with your friends and family in that virtual world. And this is really where we're starting to see that convergence and starting to really be more, I refer to, is customized virtual experience, where you're starting to choose who you could be sitting in the bench of the football team. So we're starting to experience things much more in that kind of virtual world, and we're starting to spend much more time in it, which is a bit of a contrary, because when I was growing up in the 1980s and I don't want to say my age because it gives it away, but when I was growing up, you look at what we have today, where people are looking through their mobile phones at concerts. But when I was growing up, I was constantly told, don't sit too close to the TV. It's bad for your eyes. You're going to go blind. And this is something that I continually was told when I was younger. I was sitting watching TV, playing computer games, and I was always told, sit back, sit further away, you're sitting too close to the TV. And what's quite interesting is that how much controversy or how much that's changed since when I was watching and playing computer games and doing my different activities. That this was at Mobile World Congress last year. I find there's a bit of a drastic change in what we were telling people years ago to where we are today. That really, now we're sitting in the TV, not just actually close to it, but we're actually so close that we're actually almost inside it. And this is what's going to change, is that we're always hearing about technologies taking over jobs, and we're hearing about our jobs are being automated. And what's in fact is that really it's not jobs are going to be automated and taken away. This will happen, but jobs are going to change, and how we do our work in the future is also going to change. They actually predict that more than 50% of the jobs that we have today will not exist in the next 40 to 50 years. So we have to adopt, we have to understand about what that means. And we have to look at, for our future of our children and our education, of how do we need to evolve our education system to be really more future thinking and future focused, because we really need to make sure that we're not educating for the past, but we're educating for the future. And what I've started to see with things like virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning, and artificial intelligence is really where we're actually having the convergence that humans are controlling robots more and more and more. We're starting to take people away from disaster areas, away from high-risk jobs, where we'll start seeing firemen, where we start seeing people who's, consistently in maritime, who's actually sailing ships through really rough seas, where we start seeing construction jobs, which are actually in really high-risk areas. All of those types of jobs that's in high risk to human actually health will be replaced by robots. They will be replaced by drones, and they will be replaced by technology. However, at the same time, we do need people who need to operate those, because they do need some type of human interaction, human intervention, and human decisions. So with that, we're starting to see that evolution. We're starting to see more and more jobs changing, where you have large mineral factories in Australia, and those actually large trucks. There's no one sitting in the trucks anymore. They're actually sitting in the comfort of their home, controlling those, taking them away from that harmful environment, making them have more time to spend with their families, no commute time. So this is quite significant, and it's going to really mean that we have to think about what does that mean for the future, and where do we need to be. But there's something more bigger than this that's really going to change everything. And what's interesting is that humans, we've known more about the universe and about the planet and about everything around us in the last ever existence of humans in this world that we live in. However, we've known less about our brains and how they function and how they work. And this has changed. We've actually learned more in the last 20 years about our own brains than we've ever in the entire existence of humans. And that's significant because we're starting to really understand how the brain functions and how it works. We're at the point where we can actually control things with your brain energy. We can actually read what's happening in your brain. We can actually get pictures out. It's getting to the point where we can see and stimulate the brain energy and understand what you're thinking at the time of scanning it. Now, there's some drawbacks. The size of the machines are quite large. It's not something you can carry around with you. And they're quite expensive. But over time, they will get smaller. They will get cheaper. And there will be something that we will be able to have with this. It'll be something that we can actually continually be connected. And this is really where it changes the evolution of things like artificial intelligence, machine learning. Because it's really where humans can be always connected and actually controlling devices at other sides of the world or even in other planets. We can start using this type of technology in order to actually control devices and be here. So with this, the collision of worlds is really where we're starting to see that it's not just about augmented reality and where we have human-computer interaction. We're really starting to spend more time in a virtual world. We will get to the point where, yes, we won't know when we're in the physical world, the virtual world, because we will lose sense of it. You know, we will enter the matrix. We will get into the part where we're spending so much time, we may forget where we are. We may be going on vacations in virtual reality. So we have to understand that as we move forward, that this world will become much more important and much more real to us as we actually spend the time doing our jobs. And I've got the next slide here, which is quite interesting. This is what you'll be doing as you're probably baking bread or building something or doing construction. So we will start seeing more people that's actually physically moving around and doing different activities that will really mean significant the way that we change and how we act and how we interact with people. And this is something that we have to, this is not too far away in the distant future. This is coming. A lot of the technology is already available today. We see a lot of people with quadriplegics who have lost body parts, so they've lost functions, and they've actually had it replaced with technology. And it's been connected directly to the brain, and they're controlling those arms and legs and exoskeletons and so forth. So these are things that we actually already see today. And it's not going to be too far away where we actually start, you may decide to go and do a body upgrade. We will start seeing where we can actually transfer a human brain to other clones or other bodies that will be 3D printed. Space travel will not be actually getting in a spaceship and going to another planet. It will actually be sending clones to other planets. We may be remote controlling those, or we actually may ourselves transfer our brain matter and brain energy to those devices so we can be in multiple places at the same time. So it's significant that this is how our future will be realistically becoming. And this will change things as we know it today, because already we're connected online through things like wearables. But as you start seeing that we're actually starting to get more the technology and biotechnology which is becoming implanted into us, it will mean that we're always connected. It will mean that we're always transferring data. And what does that mean for, you've been sitting here probably doing all about security and data privacy, and you've heard things like general data protection regulation, and you've heard about many other different privacy requirements. But what does this really mean for our privacy? If you're always connected, and technology is reading your thoughts and reading your brain, and you're using that to control devices, and your job is spent in technology all day long, controlling robots or drones in other locations of the planet or even the universe. What does that really mean for your privacy? Does it mean that you're going to be wearing the tinfoil hat when you're trying to sleep at night? I can tell you, when I go to conferences in DEF CON, this is actually quite common. You have a lot of hackers running around wearing their tinfoil hats and actually doing competitions about who has the fanciest tinfoil hat. But realistically, this is what we see. It's that privacy is going to be much more difficult and much more challenging going forward the more we're connected and the more we're actually using our brain to control devices, and the more our brain is actually being read by devices as we travel and as we move around the world. So this is something that we have to be really thoughtful about, because privacy is something that actually in different parts of the world it means many different things. And we're all trying to understand, we're all trying to make sure that our own definitions and terminologies is really coming down to an understanding about what that means. So privacy is something which is part of security. Privacy allows security controls and allows different attributes. But what happens? Are we already far gone? Are we already way beyond that? We're already uploading our daily lives and social networks and social media. We have to understand that those are no longer deletable. Once you put it up there, within 30 seconds, you can never delete it. So are we really realizing are we far too gone with privacy that there's no going back? And will technology mean that advancements in technology will make it much more difficult, because it's much more challenging to turn things off than it is to advance forward? And not only just with privacy, we will start to see us doing upgrades. You will start seeing people starting to actually do different types of technologies that will actually become part of your own body to actually either enhance your body or to actually prolong it. This is not, future. This is what's happening today. You may see it in different movies like Ghost in the Shell, where you see, people getting their brains implanted into artificial, clones of bodies. But this is something that is already looking. I've seen people actually implanting devices into their hand that allows them to open the door in cars and so forth. So this is already things that's moving forward, and people are already making self-conscious decisions to do so. So is this something that you've thought about? Is this something that you've considered that is really not so far away in the future, and something that we all in this room will likely see? And what does it mean? At one point in time, do you become less human and more technology? What does that mean for the future? So the question comes down to, for yourselves, what do you ask yourselves? Are you ready for that? Have you thought about the future? Have you thought about these different types of challenges or these new advancements that's coming? And are you prepared? Is your children prepared? Are they aware of what's coming? And are we actually educating them in the right fields? Are we teaching them the right technologies and the right capabilities so that they're able to deal with this when it happens? At the end of the day, we have to make sure that technology is here to support people. That we have to remember that technology was created to help us, to support us, to help us advance, help us stay healthy, help us educate. We were not created and we were not put here to help technology. Technology was here to help us. And we always have to remember that, whether it's coming down to security, then when security and technology fails, we always are too quick to blame people. We're always too quick to point fingers. But we have to remember that at the same time, those people are victims. They also are the reason why technology was created, to help them make the decisions. So this is the key point, is that we need to always make sure that as we advance technology and as we move forward, whether it being virtual reality or changing jobs or different advancements in adding bionic capabilities or exoskeletons, the technology is here to help people. And people are the center of this. We should never lose focus. Everything we should do is there to support people, to help us improve, help us prolong, and also make sure that it's there to always support us, not vice versa. Otherwise, Terminator will happen. And technology will overcome and will prolong. But we have to remember that it should always be a people-centric approach. It should always be focused on humans, and that's where we'll actually continue to evolve in society and civilization. So at that point, hopefully this is taking you on quite an interesting and thoughtful process, and that you will get to have a bit of an idea of where things are going in the future and what will actually could happen, but again, it's in your control. At that point, I'm happy to open up for if anyone has any questions or any things they would like to ask in relation to the presentation.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts about neurolace?
Neurolace, so you're talking about neuroscience and the connections of?
I mean, from the perspective of connecting our brains with the real computers.
Yeah, it's neuroscience. So with that, what happened today is that the problem that we have with a lot of the technology that's there is that 80 plus 90% of our brain energy is lost through the skull. And that's the challenge, is that in order to really effectively read the brain, either you have to have a big device or you actually have to cut part of the skull off for the energy, more energy to get through. And that allows you better resolution on the actual brain energy that you actually get. And that's why we see much more focus on neuroscience and neurotechnology, because that's really where we're no longer just putting something on your head to scan the energy. It's where you're actually physically connecting it to your body in order to get much more accuracy. And this is where we start seeing those advancements. So yes, neuroscience and neurotechnology will be key to allowing us to be more interacted with technology and more interactive with those going forward. And it will solve the problem of not having to cut into our heads and plug things back into our heads that will allow better resolution. It will actually allow much better accuracy and better results. So it's a very good question, but neuroscience is definitely something that you would want your children to be studying, non-cognitive science for algorithms. Very good question. Any other thoughts or questions? You're quite scared already? So you have to think about it. I mean, it is quite scary, but at the same time, it's actually quite exciting that the future where it's going is quite actually, I used to be afraid. I used to be always thinking about, privacy, technology is going to overcome. But at the same time, you have to think about the positives. That technology has actually really helped us advance quite significantly. It's really helped us make sure that we are healthier, we're living longer, we are communicating, we're advancing very fast. So at the same time, we have to remember the positives and the actual capabilities that we have through that. And so it's something that's more exciting, but we have to be aware of the risks as well. So at that point, I would like to thank you. It's much appreciated being here. And hopefully this has been interesting, and that we'll get to chat more later this evening or at other conferences in Estonia. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.